Morning. I'm Charles Haskell, your worship associate for today. The words for today's call to worship come from Mark Nepo in a piece entitled Behind the Thunder. I keep looking for one more teacher, only to find that fish learn from water and birds learn from sky. If you want to learn about the sea, it helps to be at sea. If you want to learn about compassion, it helps to be in love. If you want to learn about healing, it helps to know of suffering. The strong live in the storm without worshiping the storm. Now, come, let us worship together. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it now as Michael Eselun lights the chalice in our sanctuary. I do this with the words from Michael Eselun. We come together to light the chalice of our community, both in person and virtually, as a way of reminding ourselves of our common light, the spark within, the light we carry and the light we give away. May we fan the flame of spirit within ourselves and each other with encouragement, with compassion, with a willingness to be a witness, knowing that it is enough. It is more than enough. It is what we came for.
This song we sing is our heart's prayer to you, O God of peace. Please send your dove, your spirit of love, to help our torment cease. The world is tired of war and blood and fear. The tears we've cried, the pain inside, oh Spirit, draw us near. So keep us true to our heart's vow, to show the world your love. May bias wane and joy remain as we sing to you above. We pray, O God, you take away our fear, the tears we've cried, the pain inside, oh Spirit, draw us near. We pray, O God, you take away our fear, the tears we've cried, the pain inside, oh Spirit, draw us near.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Santa Monica. We are delighted you have come to connect with us either in our actual sanctuary or in our online sanctuary. We are pleased that Chaplain Michael Eselun of the Sims-Mann UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology is our speaker this morning. Two-time TEDx speaker, Michael speaks extensively to healthcare professionals, patient populations, and faith communities across the country. He's also worked as an activist educator addressing anti-LGBTQIA issues for 30 years. Michael was recently inducted into the UCLA Semel Institute Eudaimonia Society in recognition of having lived a meaning-driven life. He has 4 volumes of CDs available for purchase. To learn more about these, contact Michael through his website, www.michaeleselun.com. The worship team is in the sanctuary and in the garden. Some of you reserve space and are with us here. Some of you may be watching in the comfort of your own space at home, or you may be at some far-flung location, watching in a different time zone. Wherever you are, welcome to all of you from the many communities across the LA Basin and around the United States. We're glad you are here. If you're new to our community, please know that while our building is still closed for larger church services and events, we are still here, and there are many ways to learn about us and become involved. We offer programs to serve the needs of our congregation and to be of service to the larger world, including broad religious education and personal development for people of all ages. We also join with other social justice advocates in community activism that contributes to the justice and harmony of our world. Unitarian Universalism is not defined by creed or dogma, but is guided by principles that affirm the worth and dignity of every person and encourage an individual search for truth and meaning. We honor the wonder of existence and believe that we are all connected to each other and to the interdependent web of life. Our beliefs are drawn from scripture and science, nature and philosophy, personal experience, and ancient tradition. We are an open, affirming, and welcoming congregation, diverse in backgrounds, identities, spiritualities, and philosophies of life. We are also a dedicated peace site. We are united in our desire to create an inclusive, beloved community, to live the principles of our faith, and to serve the wider world. An important step on that journey is our acknowledgement that our church and the homes of most of our members are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Tongva people, who continue to live here and who cared for these lands for thousands of years. We recognize and mourn the often deadly harm inflicted on the indigenous people of this country. We lift up their grace, resilience, and their relationship with these sacred lands. Detailed announcements are published on a weekly basis by email on Thursdays, and news is also available on our online newsletter at news.uusm.org. Our website is also a rich source of information about our church and upcoming programs. That's at uusm.org. Find our website and check out all the wonderful upcoming opportunities to explore interests, build community, and develop your spirituality. There are many spoken and unspoken joys and sorrows that we all share. There's one in particular that I would like to share this morning. Our minister, the Reverend Jeremiah Kalende, has shared that his mother is hospitalized with COVID and at least 3 other family members have it, vaccinated and not, in 2 different states. He says that the data shows COVID is spreading like wildfire, and he wants us to stay safe and take extra precautions in this holiday season, at least for the next few weeks. Booster shots and N95 masks are helpful. Your prayers and good thoughts for Reverend Jeremiah's mother and his family are most welcome and appreciated.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, how thoughts to them are winging, when friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
El amor es la enseñanza de esta iglesia.
Love is the doctrine of this church.
Buscar la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es la oración.
The quest for truth is its sacrament and service is its prayer.
Vivir juntos en paz.
To dwell together in peace.
Buscar el conocimiento en la libertad.
To seek knowledge in freedom.
Servir a la humanidad en comunión.
To serve humankind in fellowship.
Así es como convenimos unos a otros.
Thus do we covenant with each other.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land by every tongue.
When I was in the 7th grade, I had difficulty with spelling tests. And I found it difficult being anything less than perfect, and got into the habit at looking at the test results of a girl near me who was a whiz at spelling. Yes, I was cheating on spelling tests. It made me feel terrible. I didn't like this about myself, that I was drawn into a circle of perfection that I could only meet by cheating. At the end of the year, my family moved to a new city, and I started in a new school, and I said to myself, I have a fresh start. I'm no longer going to cheat on spelling tests. In fact, I promised myself, I resolved to never cheat on a test again. I'm not quite sure why or how that happened, but that promise to myself worked. And after that, I never cheated on a test. I was almost dangerously honest, if you will, because I sometimes would say that I did something because I did, even though it hadn't been caught by the teacher. I couldn't stand not being honest. The moral of the story is that a person can change bad behavior and be a better person. You start by recognizing that you have a problem, then develop a plan to change that behavior, and then you must have the will to make the change. Sometimes you can do this on your own, while sometimes you may need help from a friend, a relative, or a loving adult. In any case, you must first realize you have a problem that needs fixing.
Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. As a reading this morning, I'd like to offer this from Brad Aaron Modlin. It's called What You Missed the Day You Were Absent from 4th Grade. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, how peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how to not feel lost in the dark. After lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep without feeling you had forgotten to do something else, something important. and how to believe the house you wake in is your home. This prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks and how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all you hear. Also, that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made the math equation look easy, the one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was you lost and one person add up to something. As we enter into a sacred time of silent reflection and contemplation, I invite you to get comfortable in your seats. Close your eyes and take a few nice deep breaths. As we breathe together, we just follow the empty breath. As we breathe, we let go of the concerns and thoughts of the day and the week behind us and the week ahead of us, the year behind us and the year ahead of us. And we allow ourselves to breathe into this moment now. In stillness, we remember that we are all sitting together in silence. We are, at the same time, cut from the same cloth, of the same essence, living from the center of our being, yearning for the same peace, the same joy, carrying the same sorrows, sitting together in silence. I have been running away from failure ever since I was first aware there was such a thing as a report card. I couldn't imagine anything worse than getting an F, the humiliation, the disgrace, so I made sure that I never did. I lived through my school years, in fact, believing that my GPA and my self-worth were one and the same thing. Even though ultimately a 4.0 GPA was flimsy proof indeed of any kind of self-worth, yet still a string of A's offered some momentary consolation and camouflage, if you will, for my true failure as a boy, as a straight boy, doing straight boy things, not like the other boys at all. I wonder how many of us still live our lives as if there will be a report card at the end, as if we'll be judged, perhaps, on how meaningful our life was, our work was, how many things we acquired, how much money we made, what kind of a parent were we. Or, on the flip side of that, living with the bone-chilling fear that I must have been absent that day, unaware that this particular moral challenge would be on the final exam, and I blew it. Sharon is facing the end of her life, ovarian cancer, and she wrestles with that very question. Michael, I've lived a pretty decent life, and I think I'm a good person, but I've made my mistakes, some big ones. I have my regrets. What if I don't get into heaven? As if she will be judged ultimately on her resume and not, say, on the love that's in her heart, if she's even to be judged at all. My grandmother Barbara, my dad's mom, was one tough cookie. So tough, in fact, that her standard reply to the greeting, "How are you?" was, "I'm just as mean as usual." "I don't believe in failure," she would say. "There's no such thing, because you can always learn something." It's a pretty common perception, particularly among those given to positive thinking as a way of negotiating life, and certainly within the mythos of American notions of success. But what I found lacking in my grandmother's declaration was compassion. If I were brokenhearted that I didn't get the thing I wanted more than anything else, devastated really, after I worked so hard to get it, I really didn't want to hear, "Well, I'm not going to feel sorry for you because you're going to learn through this," even if that proved to be true in time. Compassion, after all, only means to be with suffering, to be with it, not to fix it, not to correct it, not to advise it. It is not a small or easy thing. Authentic compassion for ourselves and one another might be the one true great healer, and yet it's not a quality I've seen on any report card or any measuring stick for success. At the same time, I resonate deeply with the writing of Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl. Everything can be taken from a man, but this one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. So maybe, yes, it ultimately is up to us to cast the final grade, to call it a success or failure, to cast that verdict. But I find myself struggling with this human urge to cast any verdict at all, looking through this dualistic lens of success and failure, win and lose. What if it's not so clear-cut as that? What if it's not so simple as that? In the early 90s, a big economic recession hit Los Angeles. I had a design business at the time, and business fell off to zero. I needed to do something quick. As a stopgap survival strategy, I took the CBEST test, I got an emergency teaching credential, and I was hired to be a substitute school teacher for Inglewood Unified School District. This was a few weeks after the Rodney King uprisings here in Los Angeles. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but soon enough I discovered I did not have the constitution to face those schools every day. So on my off days, I volunteered at Project Angel Food, delivering home-cooked meals to homebound people with AIDS. These were the peak years of the AIDS crisis. I also got involved with a fledgling volunteer AIDS hospice group called Project Nightlight, founded by our own congregation's member, Cassandra Christensen. But at the time, I felt like a complete abject failure, the loser of the world. No one could convince me otherwise. I assiduously avoided friends who might call me and dare to ask the unthinkable question, "So what are you doing these days?" What's more, I felt like a spiritual failure, like God had dispensed all the components necessary to live a successful life to everyone else except me. Firmly attached to that idea. And yet when I look back on that point in time now, I see it as the pivot point that made this part of my life possible, pointing me in this direction of chaplaincy, this career that I love so much, even though it took so many years to materialize. A career that has given my life meaning, holds the door open for it all to make sense to me now. So am I to look back on that time and call it a success, a blessing, hurting so badly that I wanted to die? The older I get, the less patience I have for that either-or kind of thinking. In the world of cancer, the stakes get much higher when we begin to conceptualize success and failure. If this diagnosis means the imminent end of my physical life, does that mean that Western medicine failed? My doctor failed. This drug trial failed. My positive affirmations and prayer failed. My vegan diet failed. My acupuncturist failed. My prayers failed. God failed me. I failed God. These profound experiences of failure are not just the province of patience. Over the years, I've walked beside countless folks left behind, the bereaved, and they too almost universally wrestle with such deep experiences of failure. If I just hadn't spent so much time at work, I would have taken better care of her. She'd still be here. If it weren't for my moodiness, my anxiety, my depression, I know I caused her so much distress. That's why the cancer came back. It's my fault. If I had just insisted that he go to the doctor sooner, that we get a second opinion, he might still be here. This urge and need to cast a verdict, I find, seldom leaves room for the verdict to be not guilty. Deanna is living with an aggressive colon cancer. She is also deeply rooted in a New Age sort of philosophy that would suggest that she can create her reality as she envisions it through positive prayer and affirmation and thinking. Up until now, that system of thought has worked rather well for her. She's found a wonderful mate. She continues to enjoy growing success in her real estate business. She's a planner and a goal setter. She likes goals with measurable outcomes, so each win only solidifies and deepens her faith that much more. How could it be otherwise? But now the tables have turned. Her disease has progressed and her prognosis is not so good. That whole paradigm of goal setting becomes far more complicated, murky. If cure is medically off the table, what can I even hope for? What goal can I set? Just more time living with chronic cancer. What's more, she feels like a spiritual failure. Michael, I think I just didn't believe hard enough. I wasn't positive enough. My affirmations weren't that strong. It's my fault. Over 20 years ago, I was covering an overnight on-call shift at the hospital, and late one Sunday night, I was paged to come up to the ICU. An elderly woman, the matriarch of a large African-American family, was very near death, and the family wanted some support and a prayer. I offered them that and left. A couple hours later, I was paged to come back because she had passed away. The family wanted some company while they waited for their pastor to arrive. Once he arrived, he took one look at the scene and said, "Looks like you all didn't pray hard enough." As if this family had failed their mother, whom they loved, as if death itself were a failure. And if that's true, all of us are guaranteed an F on our final report card. This notion of spiritual success, spiritual failure, it's a tricky concept. Again, this paradigm of either or. Over the years, I've walked beside countless folks, many deeply religious, many completely secular, but sharing the same longing. I wish I believed more. I wish I had stronger faith. When we tease that apart, what do you mean by that, stronger faith? It usually means certainty. I want to know that I'm going to be okay. I want to know that this drug trial is going to work. I want to know that God has my back. The German-American theologian Paul Tillich says the opposite of faith isn't doubt, it's certainty. If I'm certain, it's not really in the realm of faith anymore, is it? Faith might better be described as a willingness to step off into the unknown with my fears and doubts in tow and continuing to walk anyway, with my eyes and heart open, with curiosity, with patience, with humility, with compassion. With Deanna, who loved to set goals, we looked at what another goal might be that didn't have such a measurable outcome. What about a goal of coming to peace with uncertainty, with doubt, coming to peace with loss, offering herself the grace to be a human being with compassion, even for her experience of failure? In this time of COVID and all of these extreme measures with which you've had to live as we attempt to address and contain this pandemic, there are many of us, myself included, who have looked to maybe redefine, reframe our idea of spiritual success, a no report card altogether. The times sort of demand it. And there are those eternally optimistic spiritual folks who liken this time to a golden opportunity to hit the reset button for life on planet Earth, a purification, a distillation of everything extraneous down to the bare essence, what's important in life. And they embrace this distillation. Not me. I grieve. I never realized how much of an extrovert I am, that for me, real human contact, physical connection in time and space is like oxygen to me. That kind of connection and connectedness is life-giving. It's close to the meaning of life itself. And so it is for me that sitting in a darkened, sold-out theater, knee to knee with a bunch of strangers being moved to tears or laughter by the same humanity displayed on the stage becomes a holy ritual, a rite. Just as it is for me to sweat with my chums in the same dance class, in the same studio, in front of the same mirror, dancing to the same music on Saturday afternoons, and then having Holy Communion as we complain about everything that hurts. Just as it is to travel to some faraway land and get lost in some alleyway among a bunch of locals, many of whom may never have heard of Los Angeles. Just as it is to hug someone, a patient, a friend, a stranger. So much so that when those experiences have seemed to be off the table for the foreseeable future, maybe even for the rest of my life, I'm embarrassed to say that a part of me wonders if life is worth the effort without it. Not like those optimistic spiritual folks at all who embrace this. So in those moments, I call myself a spiritual failure and I give myself an F. By contrast, Bernadette is 31 years old. She meets life with this unbelievable capacity for curiosity and acceptance. This curiosity supersedes all of the anxiety that seems to accompany nearly every cancer patient. She seems to live life in the place of, I wonder what that would be like. So much so that when she began her chemotherapy and her beautiful head of red hair started to fall out, we had that conversation that I have with many women who meet this crucible, and some will share that they want to preemptively shave their head as a self-empowering gesture, or some might want to make a lighthearted ritual out of it and dye their hair green and invite their friends over for a head shaving party. No, she said, I think it'd be really interesting just to see what it's like to have your hair fall out. Once she had gone through her treatment and that year had come to a close, she was reflecting back on the year that had passed and said, Michael, I think I'd have to say, all in all, it was a pretty good year. Bernadette, in a year that includes a cancer diagnosis, chemotherapy, radical double mastectomy, radiation, if that makes it a good year, what on earth would make it a bad year? Oh, I don't know. Losing my sense of humor, I guess. A spirit like that cannot be broken. I walked beside Grace over the last 6 years of her life, metastatic breast cancer. Grace had lived a life of dizzying twists and turns, both personally and professionally, boomeranging across the country every which way. I asked her if she had a grandchild, say, or a young person came to her and said, Grace, what piece of wisdom do you have for me after living the kind of life you've led? She didn't take much time at all to respond. When the time comes, be ready to go. She actually echoes Joseph Campbell as he describes the hero's journey. In order to be a hero, you must be prepared for when the moment comes. Donna and Lois have shared the last 48 years of their lives together in their late 70s, so devoted to one another, so at ease with one another, creating this amazing bond of family in a culture that is utterly hostile to two women calling themselves a family. Over the last 8 years, Lois has been living with ovarian cancer. And as her disease progressed, she decided to take advantage of aid in dying medication for when the moment came. Lois was a no-nonsense gal, vibrant, the kind of person who's way more interested in what you have to say than needing to tell her story one more time. It was hard to tell sometimes how much she was suffering because she carried her pain with such a gracious kind of stride. While thoroughly contemporary, knows her way around a computer, she was also very steeped in old school values like letter writing and sending thank you notes. Late one Saturday night, she leaned over and told Donna, "I think the time has come and I should take the medication tomorrow." "Well, honey, if it's hurting so bad, why not take it tonight?" "I can't. I've got too many things to do." "What do you have to do?" "I've got some bills to pay and some thank you notes to write and some birthday cards to send." "Well, I'll help you do that." So after nearly 80 years of life, on the very last night of her life, she spent it sitting around the dining table with Donna, engaged in the most mundane tasks, but tasks that are nevertheless rooted in connectedness, connection, in consideration and kindness. That is an image of spiritual success in my book. This moment is enough. This activity is enough. This relationship is enough right now. The next morning, she got up and put on her best pair of red silk pajamas and said, "I might as well go out in style." If there were such a thing as spiritual report cards, I give them both an A+. As I would Bernadette for her astonishing capacity for curiosity and acceptance. As I would to Grace for her amazing ability to adapt and just ride the wave of life. Strong faith, spiritual success without a shred of certainty in sight. If there is such a thing as a spiritual report card, it might be rooted, in part, in our capacity for compassion, for ourselves and each other, for our lives, for ourselves as they are in this moment. I'm a big documentary film fan, and I remember in 1995 a wonderful Oscar-nominated documentary called Troublesome Creek. It's a story of a family farm in Iowa that had been in the family for generations, over 125 years. Russell and Mary continue to work the farm, even though they're much older now. They've raised their kids. The kids have all moved on. But they're facing foreclosure now because of a farming crisis. So it's all hands on deck. The kids come back to Iowa doing what they can to save the family farm. We're given to believe it will kill mom and dad if they have to lose the farm and move into town. So you're kind of dying a little bit as you're watching them auction off the farm equipment and the livestock and their furniture. You see Mary caressing their Ethan Allen dining table. "Oh, the Thanksgiving dinners I've served at this table." Sold. They can't lose the farm. And they do lose the farm. To everyone's shock and amazement, they become new people. Russell is like reborn, unencumbered by all of that backbreaking labor and nonstop worries. One of those guys that had those wild, untamed, bushy eyebrows. You wonder, what's up with that? There he is in the barbershop getting his eyebrows trimmed, looking his best. I'll never forget the last line of the film, narrated by their daughter, Jean. Success and failure. Sometimes it's hard to tell which is which. Yes, it is. So be it. Thank you.
together for more than ourselves. This month, we share 50% of our offering with YWCA Los Angeles. Founded in 1894, the YWCA Greater Los Angeles is a women's membership movement built on the mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. They touch over 100,000 individuals annually through various programs that include affordable child care, after-school youth programs, economic empowerment, job training and housing, and sexual assault crisis services. Additionally, they address racial justice and public policy, which are intertwined through all aspects of programs and service areas. They care for our community's women and their families by providing relevant programs and activities that address today's needs. Last church year, we received a grant from the Spirit Level Foundation to cover the costs of enhancing our sanctuary's technological infrastructure and hiring someone to help with the live streaming. The foundation will match our fundraising dollar for dollar up to $10,000 to cover these new expenses. We hope you will contribute to this critical fund and help us expand the ways we reach and serve our congregation and its communities. There are many ways to give. One, through our website, UUSM.org, by clicking the Make a Donation button or by scanning the QR code on your screen with your smartphone. Two, by texting 844-982-0209 on your smartphone with the amount followed by the code GCC for a generous congregation contribution, PLG to make your member pledge, or SLF to contribute to the Spirit Level Fund grant, which is matching our funds to help pay for the technical renovations which have made our live stream possible. You can still make out a check to the church for any of these fundraising goals. Your generous contributions support the work and communities that we all hold dear. Thank you.
Here in reverence now we gather for the blessings we have known, with a pledge to one another that we journey not alone. Joy and sorrow make us wise, kin to all that lives and dies. Love calls us on. Love calls us on.
Words and deeds of those before us, waking here to keep us strong. Lend our voices in the chorus of creation's living song. Courage bids us lift our eyes upward to the shining skies. Hope calls us on. Hope calls us on.
Loyal guides in love and duty, loyal guides, lead us with a trusted light. Blessed are they whose inward beauty shows truth and right. Honor is their earthly pride. By their work we realize faith calls us on. Faith calls us on. Faith calls us on. Faith calls us on.
We have shed a radiant hour.
We have shared
When the truth has made us free and true.
and the Spirit's gracious power.
Spirit of grace,
Dream of good that yet shall be.
for good. Right the path before us lies.
is the path. Joyful pilgrims now be
Life
right.
calls us on.
Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on.
Life calls us
Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on. Life calls us on.
With heart and mind and voice and hand, may we this time and place transcend to make our purpose understood. Our mortal search for mortal good, our firm commitment to the goal of justice, freedom, peace for all. A mind that's free to seek the truth, a mind that's free in age and youth, to choose a path no threat impedes, wherever light of conscience leads. Our martyrs died so we could be a church where every mind is free. A heart that's kind, a heart whose search makes love the spirit of our church, where we can grow and each one's gift is sanctified and spirits lift, where every door is open wide for all who choose to step inside.
I invite us to close our eyes and take a few nice, deep breaths together. We might even imagine that we can all take hands with one another in a great circle. And as we do, we feel the energy that passes between us and connects us in the family of things. In that place, might we remember to hang on to one another, to that connection, and yet loosen our grip just a bit on our need for things to be one thing or the other, our desire to cast a verdict, to call it a success or failure, to write a final report card. In this place, may we all be allowed to be who we are, as we are, where we are, with grace and with compassion. So be it.